Hi, my name is Andy Mazzucchelli. I am the Senior Energy Manager of Landsec. I oversee the delivery of our energy management strategy across our portfolio of office and retail assets. And I'm leading on a number of projects to help Landsec transition to net zero. Well, today I'll be talking about our net zero transition investment plan, the actions we are taking to decarbonize our portfolio to essentially ensure that we achieve our near-term science-based target by 2030. I'll be shedding some light on how we are maximizing the efficiency of our existing equipment in our assets, decarbonizing our buildings by removing our dependency on gas-fired equipment and engaging with our customers to help them identify and drive energy and carbon reductions. Before I do, I just wanted to start just with a bit of information about our organization. So Landsec is one of UK's leading real estate companies with a portfolio of £10.2 billion, spanning across 24 million square feet of offices, mostly in central London. It's also major retail destinations, which include Blue Water and White Rose shopping centres, and some mixed-use urban neighbourhoods. Really, at Landsec, everything that we do is driven by our purpose. The first, by creating sustainable places to make a positive contribution and impact to our communities and the planet we all share. We also bring people together by connecting communities, and finally provide our sort of customers, our people, with a platform to realise their full potential. So in April last year, we launched our refreshed sustainability strategy, Build Well, Live Well, Act Well, so that we can continue to lead when it comes to ESG. This is really an exciting milestone for us on our journey to become net zero. And our vision really is to design, develop, and manage buildings in a way that will enhance the health of our environment by achieving a net zero, also sort of improving quality of life for people, customers, and communities. And really how we are sort of framing all of this is around through essentially three key pillars, which is build well, live well, act well. So essentially we will build well by transitioning to net zero, enhancing green spaces, and really using resources as efficiently as possible. We will enable people to essentially live well by creating job opportunities in the communities and tackling local issues, as well as creating inclusive places and improving well-being. And then finally, we will act well by embedding build well, live well, and act well into everything that we do, which is around doing the basics brilliantly, including sustainable procurement, health and safety, and business ethics. So, at Landsec, we are committed to playing our part in tackling the climate crisis, and therefore I just really wanted to highlight here why it's so important for the real estate industry to be taking action. So the latest Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, so it's the United Nations body for assessing the science related to climate change, is very clear, really, in stating that the world's smoke alarm is ringing, and climate change and its impact hit everything and everyone. We've seen the global average temperature have increased by around 1.1 degrees relative to a pre-industrial period. And the current policies presently in place around the world are projected to result in around a 2.7 degree of warming. And the report shows that if the Earth's average temperature exceeds 1.5 degrees, we will see some irreversible consequences to our planet, particularly affecting coastal, polar, and mountain communities and ecosystems. Beyond 1.5 degrees, a lot of tools and adaptation we use to cope with climate change stop working and are nowhere near as effective. And we're also seeing, I suppose, rapid urbanization and demographic and social change. Therefore, really what I want to sort of say is, the time of action is now. We need to have global emissions by 2030. So really, with all of this in mind, the real estate industry will have a central role to play. We need to ensure that we increase building efficiency to drive carbon reductions and ensure asset resilience. And we also, I suppose, really need to collaborate more with our occupiers, really to drive behavior change, who have, I suppose, really such an important role to play to ensure net zero aspirations are met. We also need to, I suppose, develop, net zero buildings that enhance well-being and decarbonize existing assets by really moving away from our dependency of gas-fired equipment. And I suppose at the same time, it's really important for the real estate industry to play a real sort of a fundamental role in enhancing social mobility to improve diversity of our workforce, to address local issues through strategic community engagement. So to play our parts in reducing global emissions and address the global issues we all face, over the past decade, we've developed and embedded a robust sustainability strategy, invested in renewable energy, and we've done a lot around energy efficiency. Landsec was, in fact, the first commercial property company in the world to have set a science-based target back in 2016. And what happened is that we achieved our original science-based target in 2019, so more than a decade ahead of our 2030 target dates. So really, as a result of this, we increased the ambition of our target in line with a 1.5 degree global warming scenario. And our target was therefore to reduce our carbon emissions by 70% by 2030, which was really a foundation of our net zero plan. However, responding to the scale and urgency of the climate crisis, the Science Based Targets initiative published their net zero standard last year, setting out essentially new criteria for validating science-based net zero targets and increasing, I suppose, expectations on businesses to really make rapid emissions cuts across their value chain. So really in line with this approach, we've also increased our ambition once again, updating our sort of carbon emissions targets to align with our Science-Based Target Initiative's latest standards. So our updated targets now cover emissions from essentially all of our sources, including from our development pipeline, supply chain, and customers. So really, as part of our overall net zero target, we are committed to essentially reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions across our value chain by 2040 from a 2020 baseline year. And as part of our near-term targets, we have committed to reduce our absolute scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions by 47% by 2030 from a 2020 base year. And we have a long-term target and a commitment to reduce essentially our absolute emissions by 90% by 2040, again from a 2020 base year. And what is, I suppose, really clear is that since setting the target, we have really made significant strides towards achieving this. But you can sort of clearly see that from our essentially carbon reduction performance, we know that much more really needs to be done. To help us achieve our science-based target and to support our net zero plans, we've created a £135 million investment program. So this is really based on available technology. We've really established a delivery plan and investment case to not only meet our science-based target, but ensure compliance with minimum energy efficiency standards and alignment with the CREM global decarbonization pathway. So between now and 2030, the fund will be used to finance a series of initiatives to reduce our carbon footprint in buildings and really to drive innovation and best practice to help us meet our near-term science-based target. So firstly, the investment will go towards enhancing and driving efficiency in equipment that's already installed in our buildings through the optimization of building management systems. So BMS control equipment which account for a significant portion of the building's total energy usage, and therefore optimizing this equipment is really quite imperative. We will also look to achieve this through BMS strategy reviews by capturing essentially granular BMS data to be able to get meaningful insights so that informed decisions to drive energy efficiencies essentially can be made. And what's exciting is to complement this we are also looking to optimize equipment through innovative AI technology that is able to continuously learn operating patterns, analyze external factors such as weather, and autonomously implement every potential to save energy whilst ultimately maintaining optimal comfort conditions. We will also look to transition from our dependency of gas-fired systems by moving to air source heat pumps in line with sort of the end of life of our existing boiler and chiller systems. And also look to increase the amount of on-site renewable generation through the installation of solar panels across the retail centres where we have much more roof space available compared to our office assets. And then finally, our net zero investment plan will go towards customer engagement to really collaborate more with our tenants on energy efficiency and to help them identify opportunities for energy reductions in the space that they occupy. In fact, we find that usage from our tenants often account for over 40% of a building's energy usage, and therefore really reducing this is an important step in our transition to net zero. I just now want to give you just a bit more color around some of the initiatives which form part of our net zero transition investment plan, starting with what we are doing to maximize efficiency of our existing HVAC equipment. So having access to both live energy usage and data from thousands of sensors fed to a building management system has really played an integral part for us to ensure that equipment operate in line with the actual demands of a building. We recognize that buildings are really, highly dynamic and they're constantly changing demands. So optimizing, building controls is really, quite key to maximize operational performance. We therefore, as part of this program, appointed an engineering consultancy to help us undertake detailed review of our BMS strategies across the portfolio. And really the intended outcome of this was to define the optimal control strategy to ensure that our buildings are operating according to the optimal specification and in line with actual building demands. So essentially, through a combination of data analysis, site investigation, and dynamic modeling, a comprehensive recommendations for controls improvements were essentially uncovered. And this would ensure our plant operates much more in line with how the building is used today, rather than how the original control strategy was written before essentially the practical completion of a building. So the review has helped uncover opportunities that would in some cases save some of our buildings around 15% of total energy. Several opportunities for control improvements were identified as part of this and implemented, which included, for example, a control strategy to allow our air handling units to vary supply air temperature based on demand rather than outside air temperature, to enable essentially fan coil units on tenanted floors to operate much more efficiently zone by zone, and thus reducing occurrences of simultaneous heating and cooling, which we frequently observed. Here we in fact have an example of a case study at one of our office buildings in Victoria. And following the implementation of several BMS strategy changes, we've observed some promising results through measurement and verification. And in this case, since implementation in September, we observed a 9% reduction in electricity and 20% reduction in gas. Well, the majority of our funds from our net zero transition investment plan will really go towards the decarbonisation of our offices. Our office portfolio, in fact, use natural gas as the primary source for heating and hot water, and we've identified air source heat pumps to be the leading technology for decarbonisation of heat in our buildings. So to decarbonise our office portfolio, we've been following a 5-stage process presented here, all starting with a feasibility review to identify the technical solution needed to completely remove the use of gas. And through this, we have been identifying appropriate technology that's technically feasible and that meets the building's heating and cooling demands. And really, as part of this stage, was really important, we have also been undertaking essentially a comprehensive risk identification analysis. And some of the common risks that we identified include the need, for instance, of road closure for lifting of equipment, pipework routing and installation, But also one of the things we're really looking to observe is the possibility of disruption of our existing tenants. So following the completion of this detailed feasibility review, we've been moving on to concept design to take forward the feasibility, to look in detailed solutions to mitigate the identified risks, as well as undertaking a legal review of tenancy leases to really confirm that feasibility. And finally, developed and technical design stages are really the final two stages before we're able to execute the main contract works, which involves appointing our main contractor and finalizing solution with them to have essentially an updated program with costs and a logistics review. And what's really exciting is that this year we are aiming to start construction stages for two of our office assets. So we recognize that to achieve our ambition, we need to collaborate with our customers to reduce energy consumption and carbon emissions really across our properties. And therefore, over the past 2 years, we have worked with 25 of our office customers, carrying out essentially energy audits and recommending actions to reduce consumption. Our customers participating in the program essentially been selected on the basis of the potential impact they can have on reducing a building's overall energy usage. So as part of the energy audits, we have been performing data analysis and a site visit to understand data trends, anomalies, and opportunities. And we've also sort of been using energy efficiency questionnaires for customers and employees to capture their essentially opinions around and I suppose ideas around what they can do to reduce energy. And also we've been undertaking interviews where with some of the key stakeholders that have been identified to have, I suppose, a sort of an influence on decision-making and the delivery of energy-saving measures. And through this, we're able to review a customer's own internal sustainability goals, policies, procedures, and to really help us understand the relative priority and, I suppose, maturity of ESG and energy management, and ultimately help us identify potential needs for additional implementation support. Well, so far, estimated savings per customers range from 20 to 30%. And importantly, the program provides customers with, I suppose, insights on what they can do to reduce their bills, tackle their operational carbon footprint, and hopefully meet their own sustainability targets. As part of this, I just really wanted to quickly mention we've identified a number of key cost-effective opportunities, which include lighting control and upgrade opportunities. For instance, a common opportunity which was often implemented by our customers was a switch off of perimeter lighting. And, we've seen that these lighting fixtures, I suppose, contributed to minimally to lighting levels in the space as they're directly adjacent to external glazing. Further to this, another really exciting opportunity which was uncovered was around zonal working on low occupancy days. I suppose it was no surprise since the introduction of hybrid working, office occupancy on Fridays has remained quite low, and therefore we've been recommending an opportunity to ask staff to work in a designated area or zone in the office to enable both lighting and HVAC systems to run at lower run times outside this area. In fact, this is an opportunity that we at Landsec are trialing at our head office, and we're already seeing some really promising results as part of that. So just wanted to finally say, as we continue our journey to net zero, we will no doubt continue to face challenges. We will undergo, for instance, implementation challenges, for instance, installing air source heat pumps in occupied offices with minimal disruption to our occupiers. The cost of implementation itself is a challenge. Taking actions to decarbonize essentially is not cheap, and the economics really need to be balanced by cost savings. We've essentially recognized that achieving net zero requires, I suppose, a genuine transformation of our business and a change to the way we design, develop, and manage our buildings. I suppose we don't really have all the answers now, but from the work we have already done, we've identified some of the sort of the key ingredients that are needed for continuing and accelerating, our transition to net zero. Firstly, it's about really setting, ambitious targets. Also, it's about being an advocate for sustainability within your sector and sharing what you've done and I suppose the lessons learned. Collaborating and partnering is also an absolutely important part. And finally, really important. I think we must not really be afraid to innovate and test new ideas and solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. That's absolutely fascinating stuff. Not least the role in tenants operating the buildings, and I think obviously Landsec's got a great overview of the development process from client to end user. So your insights are very, very interesting. We've got some questions in here from a couple of the audience that kind of connected. We've got Kaz Kundi who's asking how you're dealing with the issue of supply chain emissions. I think this is a big head scratcher for main contractors as well as clients. Kaz is saying that he finds it difficult sometimes to get hold of information on purchase good and services supply chain, and rely on spending-based approaches to estimate emissions, which obviously sounds like it would not necessarily give a completely accurate reflection. And then there's another one below from Paul Toyne, which is asking about the importance of the supply chain presumably increasing as the grid decarbonises. Then that presumably we're looking to beat down all emissions from all quarters. So Paul's asking, embodied carbon in heat pumps and HVAC systems, etc., which is obviously about materials, but there's a couple of things tied up there which relate to supply chain, both in materials and both in the operations of the firms that are delivering some of the work. So can you kind of take that on and give us some insight into how you might deal with getting robust information on those aspects?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think these are, obviously really key issues. And, as I sort of mentioned in the presentation, as part of our new target, we are looking to reduce our absolute emissions across our supply chain. And that's obviously looking at sort of reducing emissions from our purchased goods and services, obviously going to play a really key part to that. And we're sort of really, I would say, sort of the start of the journey for that. And what we're sort of currently doing to really sort of tackle this, and I think there's, as you mentioned, real challenge there, is we are sort of putting out key sort of supplier questionnaires when we sort of approach our suppliers to really sort of understand in detail around what they're doing around minimizing emissions. And I think that's something that we go through sort of a rigorous approach to really sort of ascertain what the best approaches are being taken to minimize that, and really sort of analyzing that to ensure we're taking sort of the appropriate approach. And I suppose as well, sort of in terms of sort of reducing, embodied carbon is absolutely key. We are, ultimately also a developer, and we've really set some ambitious targets to reduce our average embodied carbon of a typical building really by 50% by 2030. Really aiming for 500 kilograms of CO2 per meter squared for offices, and I suppose achieving this, will require. I suppose really require us to rethink the way in which we design and develop our buildings. And I suppose what we're doing is we're really prioritizing asset retention, where that's possible, and really adopting new ways of design and using sustainability, using sort of sustainable materials as part of that.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks for that. Unfortunately, time, the old enemy, is beating us to another question, but I think again the audience can get in contact if needed. So thanks, Andy.